I think we'll get started. Good morning and welcome everyone to this webinar with the Center for the Future of Arizona, creating a stronger and brighter future together. My name is Matt Lohr and I'm with the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. The League has had a very long-standing relationship with CFA, and many of you joining us today know that CFA is a familiar part of our annual conference each year where they share information, tools, and resources that they provide to Arizona communities and leaders to support informed decision-making for the future of our state. This year, as we all know, 2020 has been a unique year all around, and so we did not have our in-person annual conference, but we still wanted the chance to highlight CFA's work through this virtual platform. They have some exciting news and updates to share that I'm sure you'll be interested to learn about. We'll be hearing from members of their team as they update us about the Arizona We Want Progress Meters portfolio, which is a set of tools that measures our progress in building a strong and sustainable future for the state of Arizona. In addition, they will take a first look at some of the metrics and data from their new Young Talent Progress Meter. And lastly, a panel discussion is part of today's program that will provide examples of how communities in Arizona are utilizing the progress meter in their jurisdictions to frame conversations, guide decision-making, and measure the progress on how Arizona is doing on these issues that matter to most of us. One housekeeping matter before we begin. If you have any questions for the speaker or the panelists at any time, please write your question in the Q&A section in your toolbar. You should see the Q&A section either at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen. And we'll try to get to all the questions in due course. And if we don't, we will then either contact you afterwards or feel free to contact any one of us. All right, we'll now begin. I'd like to introduce CFA's leader, Sibel Francis, who will be our first presenter this morning. Dr. Sibel Francis is a founding member and president and CEO of the Center for the Future of Arizona, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that brings Arizonans together to create a stronger and brighter future for our state. For more than 3 decades, Dr. Francis has been a dedicated public policy architect who is committed to advancing innovative solutions to important societal issues that we face. Please welcome her, and I now turn it over to you, Dr. Francis.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Matt, for your kind introduction. And I'd also like to thank the League of Cities and Towns for hosting this webinar today. We've been honored to partner with the League for several years running now to help share information about the Arizona We Want and the Arizona Progress Meters in supporting of advancing a strong future for our state. Our objective really is to showcase how we can use the Arizona Progress Meters to help drive data-driven decision-making and action, all in support of a strong future. And as you mentioned, Matt, or alluded to, in many ways, this is more important now than ever. So again, thank you, Matt, and to the League for your support and interest in this work and for this opportunity today. And I'd also like to offer heartfelt thanks to all of you here with us today and for all that you do for your communities and on behalf of Arizona every day. This is an unusual format. I think it's fantastic that we can come together this way, and I appreciate your all being here. So Matt already said a little bit about CFA, but I would like to help set the stage for our discussion and share a bit of background about the Center for the Future of Arizona. As Matt mentioned, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan 501c3 organization, and we were founded in 2002 by Laddie Kaur, the former president of ASU, whom many of you know. And I'm proud to have helped build this organization from the beginning. Our mission is simple, but also a tall order, and that is to bring Arizonans together to create a stronger and brighter future for our state. We do our work in 4 important ways. First, we listen to Arizonans and what matters most to them. Our agenda is not based on what we think is most important, but what Arizonans say their priorities are. And I'll say more in a few minutes about how we learn about what matters most to Arizonans. Second, we share trusted information about how Arizona is doing and how we are doing the things that matter most to Arizonans. Third, based on the things that we're learning about Arizona, we identify and bring attention to important issues that matter to the future of our state. And finally, we bring tools and data to help mobilize communities and leaders around the state to tackle the issues that they care most about. We, as an organization, have done deep work and made significant impact in education, workforce, and civic engagement through our many programs. We've impacted hundreds of thousands of students, trained hundreds of school leaders across the state, worked with scores of employers in our programs, and convened dozens of communities around the state in our work to advance a stronger and brighter future. So let me return to the question of how we listen to Arizonans and how we do that. For those of you who've attended these gatherings in person in the past, these will be familiar things that you'll be hearing. But over the years, in our commitment to listen to Arizonans, we've done that in multiple ways, including conducting countless community meetings across the state, conferred with hundreds of community leaders, and I think we can put this kind of gathering in those categories. We've brought young people together in focus groups to better understand their unique concerns, and you'll hear more about that later. And for those of you who are familiar with our work, you'll know that one of the major milestones in our work of listening to Arizonans occurred just over 10 years ago, when we first partnered with the Gallup organization. Our goal at that time was to find out what Arizonans cared most about across a broad range of issues. And we were pleased, if not surprised, to learn that Arizonans are in fundamental agreement about the things that matter most to them and to the future of our state. We may not always agree on how to reach those outcomes, but we really have the same shared core public values that unite us around the important questions regarding education, health and well-being, jobs, sustainability, and other issues. All of this came together in the concept of the Arizona we want, which you can see our visual representation of that on the screen. The Arizona we want is a shared vision of success around what matters most to Arizonans that expresses their highest aspirations and hopes for the future. So this raises an interesting question. If we know what Arizonans care about, how do we know how we were doing in making progress towards those shared goals? And that's really where the Arizona progress meters come in. CFA has launched this robust set of tools, the Arizona progress meters, that help us measure and report on our progress in achieving the Arizona we want and in the 8 priorities areas that you can see on the screen. The Arizona progress meters were developed through a very rigorous multi-year process, which included close consultation with Arizona leaders and technical experts, input from 300 critical reviewers statewide, and the insights of young people gathered through focus groups around the state. We wanted these progress meters to be easily understood, supported by regularly updated, publicly available, and trusted data, and useful as a guidepost for assessing policy and practice. And most of all, we want them to be useful in driving data-driven decision-making and action. And I'll have a few examples of that in just a minute. I'm very excited to share with you that as we speak, Arizona, CFA, in partnership with Gallup, is in the field conducting our second only of these major statewide surveys, and we will be releasing those results in the early part of 2021, so stay tuned. So now you can see on your screen the Young Talent Progress Meter, which is another major milestone for CFA. It's our 8th progress meter in this set, and the Young Talent Progress Meter is really what we're going to be highlighting in a few moments. We know that our long-term success as a state depends on the contributions of all of our young people. We did go about developing the Young Talent Progress Meter in a slightly different way than the others, as we approach the question of how to ensure that Arizona is the place for young people to thrive and stay. We realized that we needed to first listen to their concerns, hopes, and dreams for the future. We launched a statewide survey listening tour to really understand the unique perspectives of young people. What are their hopes for their families and their communities? What attracts them to Arizona? What will make them stay here? What might cause them to leave? Their voices have informed the Young Talent Progress Meter, and I'm excited that you'll hear from a couple of our young talented folks in a few minutes. And you'll also hear in a few minutes from our Director of Civic Health Initiatives, Christy Tate. So I just wanted to take a moment before we do turn to our panel to highlight some of the ways in which we use all of this information, how we use this data, how we use these progress meters to impact our communities. I'm proud to share with you just a few examples of how the progress meters have helped provide a framework for discussion, problem solving, and long-term planning. The first of the progress meters, which has been in the field the longest, is the education progress meter. And we developed this progress meter in partnership with Expect More Arizona. And it's helped build a roadmap for Arizonans to work together to address issues in our educational system and educational outcomes. We're proud of our partnership with Expect More Arizona in driving a statewide conversation about the role of education in our communities, in driving our economy, and in Arizona's future competitiveness. The Education Progress Meter has now been formally adopted by 60 cities and towns and is working just as we had hoped. It's being used by government agencies, policymakers, cities, towns, and communities across the state to inform and drive actions to improve educational outcomes. So let me just give you a couple of examples of how it's been working. The city of Flagstaff invested in preschool programs to provide quality preschool for low-income families. This is part of the work of Launch Flagstaff, whose focus areas align with the Education Progress Meter. In Pinal County, the Education Progress Meter helped to highlight gaps in third grade reading, third grade reading proficiency and post-secondary attainment. This realization led to Achieve Pinal, a community coalition focused on reaching the statewide Achieve 60 post-secondary attainment goal. I apologize. Excuse me. The Education Progress Meter also helps spark locally driven solutions, including career exploration for high school students and new third grade literacy initiatives. Building on this great model with the Education Progress Meter, we're now partnering with communities to use all of the progress meters to drive long-term planning. One of the premier examples of this is our partners at NACOG in Northern Arizona. They've developed an award-winning comprehensive economic development strategy with the Arizona We Want progress meters. And the progress meters are being used as performance evaluation tools to monitor progress in the 4-county region. These are just a few examples of how progress meters can be used. And as we learn more about how to do this, we are accelerating our impact in this area. So we know that what gets measured gets done, and that's certainly one of the driving forces behind the progress meters. So our goal in launching the full set of Arizona progress meters is to support long-term planning efforts, provide measurable benchmarks, and support data-driven decision-making statewide, regionally, and locally, all in service of the Arizona we want. So our panelists today will share even more examples about how this kind of data is sparking engagement and fueling decision-making on priorities that matter most to Arizonans. I'm so happy to introduce them now to join us in this discussion. They're going to start appearing on your screen, which will be moderated by Evelyn Kosuga, CFA's Director of Economic and Community Prosperity. I know that all of you know and love Evelyn as we do. Evelyn has over 30 years of experience in economic and community development, leadership, and civic engagement. Her previous roles include General Manager of Community Affairs at APS and nearly 10 years in municipal government, including serving as City Manager of Eloy and Town Manager of Marana. We're so fortunate to call Evelyn part of our CFA team, but we really know she belongs to all of Arizona, and she's been helping us develop partnerships to bring these tools to your community. So thank you for all you do, Evelyn. Thank you for leading this panel today, and I will now turn it over to you. And thank you all in the audience today.
All right. Sibel, thank you so much for that very, very generous welcome and introduction. So moving on, we're going to have a panel discussion now. So Sibel described 3 examples of organizations actively using the progress meters. There may be many listeners out there and others of which we are unaware who are using one or more of the progress meters in your work already. And actually, we would love for you to, we'd love to find out who you are. And if you could enter the information in the Q&A, we'd most appreciate that information. So we want to track to see who is using this. So over the last several years at the League of Arizona Cities and Towns in-person conferences, as Sibel mentioned, the Center for the Future of Arizona has engaged panel members to give context, texture, and doses of reality to data. And today is no exception. We have 3 guests from very different sectors to describe their experiences and interaction with the Arizona Progress Meter. And we hope that you as attendees can create your own opportunities in your communities and organizations in the use of data to spark dialogue and to move to action. That's what's important here. And if you have questions, as Matt mentioned, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll see how many we can get to towards the end here. Let me now introduce Joel Millman, Taniqua Broughton, and Luke Amargo. So, are you guys all on? Yes. And if each of you could tell us about your organization in your role, including the geography that you cover. So I'm going to kick it over to Joel, and then Taniqua, and then Luke. So Joel.
Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you to Arizona League of Cities and Towns and CFA for inviting me to participate in this. Joel Millman with the Pinal County, and I work as the Workforce Director for the Pinal County Economic and Workforce Development Department. And in that capacity, we work hand in hand with our economic development efforts in the county, with the county as a whole, and also the individual cities and towns throughout the county, to ensure that we have aligned strategies to support the business pursuits, acquisitions, and retention and expansion from a workforce perspective. And so we work primarily through our Arizona at Work framework. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, Arizona at Work is a statewide network of employment and training programs that are federally funded. And it's a host of programs that are primarily targeting those individuals with barriers to employment, but overall assisting individuals matching their talents to the talents that are being sought by the local business community. And I can continue on how we use these progress meters, unless you want to go around and introduce everybody first and then circle back.
Yeah, let's do that. So Taniqua and then Luke.
Yes, thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, CFA, as well as the City of Leagues and Towns for this opportunity. So I am Taniqua Broughton, and I serve as the Executive Director for the State of Black Arizona. The organization has, I've been with the organization since 2014. And while the organization's name has been around since 2009, we officially became an organization in 2015 and soon after receiving our tax exemption. The State of Black Arizona creates a platform for the synthesis of data, demographics, and research that inform the community on the status of African Americans in Arizona. We help community leaders and organizations on effective action planning and decision-making related to the issues and the concerns that impact us the most. The goal is to encourage a more concerted effort by these representatives to provide solutions that improve the lives of all Arizonans. We primarily serve Arizonans in Maricopa and Pima counties, while serving communities of individuals that identify as African Americans across the state. We carry out our mission through reports, publications, and Black leadership programs. Our reports are snapshot overviews of one specific issue on a concern that relates to Black and African Americans in Arizona. An example is our 2017 State of Black Education Report. Our publications are full of narratives on the affairs that are important to African Americans in Arizona. The publications are a hallmark of our work, and in 2021, we will be releasing our 5th publication titled Driving Local Investments in Black Arizonans. And our Black Leadership Program colors a layer of professional development opportunities for emerging and career professionals We offer 10-week cultural competency with skill building called our African American Leadership Institute. For HR and D&I leaders, as well as ERG and BRG leaders and C-suite professionals, as a collaborative, they can access our leadership convening. Leadership is designed to connect with our current supporters and sponsors in how they build, support, and retain leadership, but specifically Black leadership in their companies. We have 10 major corporations that are involved. Our objective is to provide a safe, collaborative space for Phoenix leaders to explore, develop, and practice diversity, equity, and inclusion principles to increase our ability to affect a positive change in our workplace, in our communities.
Great, Taniqua, thank you so much for that introduction. Luke.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Luca Margo here. So it's been a crazy 2020, and I'm glad we get to do panels like this, albeit online. I think the world's getting a little bit smaller, even though it feels a little bit on fire. I think it's fair to say. But my name is Luca Margo. I work for Better Business Bureau serving the Pacific Southwest. We have campuses in Maricopa, Mojave, Yavapai, Yuma, and when I talk to people all the way from Havasu or just locally here in greater Maricopa, some of the major things that I'm really passionate about what we do when it comes to Better Business Bureau is our variant services, but also looking at Arizona, not just in Maricopa, but as a whole. And that's why I'm endlessly thankful for organizations like CFA and being a part of their Youth Advisory Council, specifically because they have a passion for not just looking at the heart, but the hearts all over Arizona. So with Better Business Bureau, one of the things that I'm sincerely thankful for is we serve veterans, we serve refugees, and on top of that, we serve other youth and entrepreneurship, but also people who just have young ideas or who really want to move and groove and really make a difference in the Valley. So with Better Business Bureau, we're not your average trade association. We've had to adapt throughout the years. And really, when you think about the next generation, we really have to know how we can honor new ideas, but also how to be ethical, how to be trustworthy, and how as a community, as a trade association, really build trust. What every business society needs is being able to trust contracts, to trust each other. And the 2020, this concept of trust has been really challenged. So I was hired on along with a couple other people who I really love working with. And we're some of the first folks ever in any Better Business Bureau to hold our title, because we recognize that, to quote the Pulitzer winner poet, like the times they are changing, and we have to be able to adapt and grow with it. So our CEO has been great with that. So we have a lot of charters throughout Arizona, and we recognize that innovation, thought leadership, all those fun buzzwords, they don't just exist in the heart of Arizona, but throughout the whole heart of what is Arizona. So I'm super glad to be here. Evelyn, thank you for helping me with Zoom earlier. Really appreciate you. But I'm excited to get started.
All right, very good. Now each of our panelists has a very specific question to each of them. So I'm going to start with Joel. So as a workforce organization, your area of interest would understandably be focused on jobs. However, your proposed strategic plan, which I've seen and read most of it, includes all 8 progress meters. What is the reasoning behind this approach, and how could the data be helpful in meeting the mission of your organization?
Well, thanks, Evelyn. And first of all, I just want to share with everybody that I serve on the Achieve Pinal committee in Pinal, and through those efforts, and just to, as everybody knows, working with Evelyn on numerous occasions and throughout the county. Part of our Arizona work, we work through a federal grant, and part of that grant, we have our requirement for a 4-year strategic plan of how Arizona at Work is going to coordinate all the services from the numerous federal programs that we, as I mentioned before, that we are under our umbrella. Now, this 4-year strategic plan is, again, focused on individuals that have barriers to employment. And you would think that, yes, our primary focus is workforce development, but in order to link an individual with barriers to employment, or even someone who's just looking for work, to employment, we have the jobs progress meter is great, but we have all that data, and I'm not discounting the jobs progress meter because this is great. All the progress meters are in one nice package, but for example, an individual may be looking for work and they come into one of our centers. The barriers that they bring with them go beyond just seeking employment and getting it. They may come in saying, I need a job today. And in speaking with them, you may find out they have a whole bunch of other issues that a job may not be number one on their priority. They may be homeless. They may be not having sufficient access to food. They may have health issues. They may lack education. And so all these things, when you look at the progress meters, we have to be, as those in the workforce development arena, have to be cognizant of the community as a whole and who are we serving and what resources are available. What is the direction that our community is heading, whether it's the county as a whole or individual cities. It's all part of a comprehensive package of assisting one individual connecting to a business. There's short-term strategic planning and also long-term strategic planning. And so we look forward to embedding, and I thought it was very important to make the progress meters part of our plan because it'll allow us, and we're just getting started on this. This plan was just approved in July. And Evelyn knows that, and she's been on my radar to come and present. We have a local workforce development board that represents Pinal County. And I'm going to be asking Evelyn and CFA to come and present the progress meters because I feel it's very important that we look at a holistic approach to workforce development. And it's not just workforce development, it's economic development. Evelyn mentioned the third grade reading, or it was mentioned, the third grade reading program through Achieve Pinal. As folks know, in Pinal County, one of our highlights right now going on is Lucid Motors. Lucid Motors is hiring folks at a rapid rate, but there's a third grader, and we mentioned the third grade reading program. A third grader today, in 10 years, is going to be looking for employment, if not before, and through their teens. And now's the time to prepare that individual, or at least start planting the seeds of how important it is to prepare themselves for the future employment opportunities that Pinal County is going to be offering. Lucid Motors is a good example. We have existing employers that are in the county and the cities that are looking for a workforce, and all aspects of the progress meters point to putting together, again, a comprehensive package of not just for today, but really building the future. We like to say Pinal County is almost like a blank slate right now. It's a clean canvas, and we're really starting to paint the picture. 10 years is not that far down the road. And for what is being planned in Pinal County, which I'll mention some things later on, it is pretty amazing. And we have to start planning now. We're starting to have 10, 20, and 30-year strategic plans getting outlined right now. And the workforce, natural resources, healthcare, community engagement, all plays into the growth and the health of the county for able to be to sustain a viable workforce to support this and the rest of the community. And just in closing on this topic here, I'd just like to say that when it came to workforce development, there was always an analogy that was given that workforce development, economic development, and education create the picture of a three-legged stool. That they each support each other, equally important in putting together a viable workforce. I like to think about that now. That three-legged stool can now become an eight-legged bench, and so those 8 legs, each represented by the progress meters, and the bench, representing the community as a whole. Because without this focus on all aspects that the meters represent, a community is bound to probably falter in one way, and it's probably be only as strong as each of those meters that they represent within the community is there to support it.
Well,
So that's
Joel,
why I put it in our plan.
oh, that's why. Hey, Joel, thank you so much. And hopefully, audience, as you're listening to all of this, you too will be inspired by what is happening in other parts of the state or other organizations to incorporate that in the work that you all are doing. So next, a very specific question to Taniqua. So data in the Black community is more often than not included or simply unnoticed, whether it's smaller sample sizes or whatever it might be. How can data be helpful as communities, and we're speaking to many of them here, as they choose to recognize gaps and inequities to bridge needs and create more equitable places. Taniqua.
Thank you, Evelyn. And that's a really great question. I think it ties a lot back to our actual mission. So when you begin to think about disaggregating the data, you will begin to see the full story. And as you know, the last year and a half, we have been on a journey of disaggregating 5 of the 8 progress meters. And so that's great steps, but we want to get to the point that anything that we need, we can actually disaggregate. So here's an example. So if you look at the census data for disconnected youth, you'll see a 10-year story of Arizona re-engaging youth and young adults. However, when you look at it by race and ethnicity, you begin to learn that Black youth and young adults are actually losing out on the opportunity, and it is a growing population. So, however, since African Americans are a small population and we do not impact the trend lines as deeply as whites and Latino population in Arizona, this is one of the examples why disaggregated data is necessary. And we are at a place where we need to make meaningful investments in all communities. So this is just one example of a story that shows whatever efforts we are using, we are missing the Black community.
Okay, all right, great. And if you have another example, you could share it with share it with us later.
I'll share another quick example. Median income.
Sure.
You know, median income right now has boosted, and when you look at it for African Americans, it's about 50,000, which has come from the increase, and it is higher than the national average or the U.S. average. So when you look at it, you can say, "Wow, African Americans are doing excellent in Arizona because their income has increased." But what we have found when you look at all of the data that is aggregated across it, there are 2 factors that could influence that. One is thinking about that the minimum wage increased. And so that gave equity for everyone. It was equality for everyone, not equity. So everyone across the board. So while we increased by 5%, the white population increased by 30% when we think about just that. And then the second part is that when we look at migration, we have a lot of African Americans who are coming from other places with education attainment with them and able to ask for jobs for a higher income. So it does increase it. The middle is very vast, it's large, but on the 25,000 or less, it's still 20% of people not making a lot of money are African American, and still a smaller percent making over 100,000. So those are just examples where it's like, you can't just look at the number and say, everybody's doing well, and especially African Americans are doing well. You have to understand the full story.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. All right, Luke, as a member of the Center for the Future of Arizona Young Talent Advisory Council, you've actively been participating in the development of the Young Talent Progress Meter, and you're going to hear more about it, as Sibel mentioned, from Christy Tate shortly. So, Luke, how do you see the focus of young leaders on workplace culture and access to opportunity as a benefit to Arizona and its economy? I know there's a number of cities and towns out there who care about their young people staying in their community. So please speak to this.
Yes, so I sincerely appreciate the methods and the methodologies that they strategically laid out as they were getting data. So classically what happens is people just do surveys. They utilize some random form builder, and then they throw in some questions that sound about right, that kind of lean a certain direction. But they, throughout the whole process, created, in my mind, something that I actually haven't personally experienced, seen and added and heard from young people throughout the steps, from the focus groups, of course, getting the survey results, reaching out to youth organizations and organizations that happen to field them. And on top of that, having people to advise and look through it, and then see how we could really tell the stories of the data. So hopefully, as I speak about the workplace and young people, hope you get a bad case of the FOMO if you're not on the gravy train when it comes to this. There's a classic quote that people subscribe to a guy named Levi Lusko, because like this, I'm going to read it so I don't murder it. Don't ask what if we train them and they leave. Ask what if they don't train them and they stay, right? So I would rather have someone be trained up, right, and learn how to make the world a better place than for them just to be a mediocre person in an organization. And what I've discovered is that if you inspire people, and even if they leave your organization, they often stay in your state and they often stay in your city. And on top of that, they often find ways to collaborate with you. You know, the places that I have left, whether it was startups or even my university, I am still talking and connecting with them. So just see this kind of as a mutually benefit opportunity. So with that, of course, I'm going to start with an anecdote. In 2008, you know, the classic thing where there's a lot of families in trouble. I was a young, scrappy individual and full of, I think Nirvana is classic for their idea of like, what is teenage angst, you know, that identity of what is to be a punk. I don't think I fit the bill exactly. I mean, I could get into that. I think you'll have to get the coffee with me, buy me coffee, and I'll tell you more about it. But during this time in 2008, our family was going through a lot of trouble. And there was an opportunity for me to go to Pinyon in the Navajo Nation and do some work there alongside a veteran who happened also to be a part of a pastoral group. And then I got, for the first time at this young age, got to really feel alive in Arizona, you know, in rural Arizona, not the city, you know, but discovering a bit more about myself. And all this angst I had in 2008, I was able to be mentored and challenged even in a small blip of time. And when you really think about young leadership, it's about giving them opportunities to release that energy. You see in 2020, something that's throughout the whole span of time is you have this energy and they have to be channeled. So there's a difference between stopping energy and channeling energy. So what happens is a lot of young folks, right, they will go where they're heard. And if you find a culture that is stopping people from actually being able to communicate their beliefs and how they feel about things, they will often go to another location, another opportunity, or another state, right? So internally, when you think about the economy, what powers the economy, of course, I hate to sound like a buzzword kind of guy, but it's really this energy. And where is this energy and this human power going? And if you are stopping individuals from being able to develop and push forward, there's really, and I'm not a great scientific guy, but one of my favorite things I studied when I was a kid was this idea of potential power, right? Is that how can you put this really energetic individual in a place where they could really inspire and push forward? And the question is, how could they have the greatest impact? You know, not even just who they are, but in their trajectory and their vector for success, right? So it's not a question of stopping, but a question of where to channel this energy. And in the economy, like Sibel was talking about, youth, they're going to be the new economy. They're going to be the ones paying for Social Security. Like, we all have to be in this together. And this is something I'm embarrassed to say, but when I was a young manager at GCU, we had an individual who came in who I knew when I was working at TEDx GCU, and I got hired at GCU. And then he told me about this thing called Millennial Coaching, right? And this idea of Millennial Coaching is when someone came into a big organization, there'd be these CEOs who've been in there for a while, who would bring millennials in who were recently hired, and those millennials would co-coach them on technology and the new wave of that generation. And this individual who happened to be a Gen Zer was telling me about what millennials are doing. I was unaware, and it was a very meta thing. And there's really a mutual benefit. Like today, I was struggling to get on Zoom, and Evelyn's the one who helped me get on, right? Is that she was trained, and then she was able to train me. And it's really a concept of youth as a theme and youth as a concept, and being able to be inspired and willing to learn. Like, that's really the thing that anyone could learn, is being able to be inspired. And Evelyn, thank you for helping me hop on. I really needed you this morning. The mentorship of next generation. I'm not going to spoil the data, but if you look at the data, one of the key things that youth are really passionate about is K-12 organizations and making sure that they have education. And you see that the next generation cares about mentorship. They want to give what we oftentimes felt like we didn't have growing up. And that's something I'm really proud of, that some of my first mentors I ever received happened to be someone who was a veteran. You know, I came from a family of veterans, right? And we got to experience and see the world from their lens, from that Arizona rural lens, that something I was not really aware of. And I got to really reinvigorate and change my energy to a different location. And so when you think about opportunities for mentorship, think of soft skills, hard skills, connections. And really, when you think about all this stuff, that powerful quote that's found on the PDF is salary can be negotiated and accommodated, but work culture cannot. And really, when you think about everything going on in life, really the idea of human capital is really what drives the economy. And I just want to encourage everyone who's really sometimes hesitant about the new wave of the generation, just know that they care and they know that they just want to be channeled in the right direction. And we've seen recently what happens when you don't channel people's energy in a way that is actually productive. So I just want to encourage everyone and really want to thank you for your time here.
Okay, very good. We have a few more questions for our panelists collectively. So for each of you, how do you anticipate using the progress meters? Oops, let's see, sorry, I got disappeared. For each of you, how do you anticipate using the progress meters data to further your work? In what way? What audience and stakeholders are you targeting? So Taniqua, let me throw this over to you first, and then Luke, and then Joel. So Taniqua.
Absolutely. Yes. So I'll kind of, I have two answers to that. One of the biggest things for us is having track data year to year and being able to access at point in time, because you already know it has been minnow and far for us to be able to always have any aggregated or disaggregated data. We hope that the progress meters will allow us to create accountability, to have conversations with our elected officials, with our cities and towns, to be able to say, hey, do you have a Black agenda? You have X percentage of African Americans in your community. And what are you doing to make sure that their quality of life has improved considering these issues and concerns? So I would say that is one of the first ways. And then the data for us also provides the context of the lived experiences and the stories for the Black community and what they've been facing far too often. You can't just look at the number and see it go up and say, yeah, you do have to look at the other factors. And unfortunately, sometimes institutions of power want data in order to validate our experiences, and that's really for us. But it's not right, but it gives us an opportunity to leverage it as a starting place with institutions that may not be race explicit, or to know where to begin. And I think that is very important as we move forward.
Right. Are there other audience and stakeholders? I mean, that's a great start. I mean, we're talking to a lot of cities and towns on this call, as well as other organizations. Are there other targeted groups that you might be reaching out to? Nonprofit world, for example?
Yeah, nonprofit, I would say, in the context of thinking about when people are making decisions, who they are serving, do they have access to the actual data to the areas in which they are serving in? We have been able to provide that far little, and we want to be able to provide that far more moving forward. And so I would say, I think of all Arizonans, and then how do we sort of trickle down into the stakeholders in which we can get data that is tracked consistently, so they can connect those to their plans and their goals, or the programming that needs to be developed or not. And when someone does come to me, can I provide them point in time data? I can pull it right then and say, this is where we are today. And that's really where we want to go to further making sure we have a voice at the table, but making sure our voice matters as a whole.
Great, thank you. Because as I was scrolling through the attendees, there were a number of nonprofit groups on that list. So we're certainly glad to have a collective conversation today. Thank you, Taniqua.
Thank you, Evelyn. I want to say, State of Black Arizona is targeted around issues and concerns for African Americans, but we need all Arizonans to care about African Americans. So it's for everyone. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Luke, the question about anticipating progress meters to further your work, in what way, and stakeholders and audiences?
Yeah, so selfishly as a manager, this is something that's going to help me as I identify issues and relate with things that sometimes, even though I'm an individual who happens to be young, but making sure that I'm aware of what my peers care about too. I don't want to be insular about my beliefs. I want to make sure that I'm challenging myself and looking at data. And what I love about the progress report is the idea of tethering these ideas with people. And so what I'm excited for specifically with the progress meters, especially as a leader and as a BBB moves forward, is utilizing case studies and examples to really showcase what it means to be someone who is not only young but in a situation where they're trying to develop as a leader for the economy in Arizona. And so a lot of people might look at this as an opportunity, and this is common in the field for those who study psychology, especially when it comes to user experience and user interfaces, is actually utilizing it for just purely business purposes and not changing their culture. So we just have to make sure as a culture that we are pushing people to look internally, not just externally. Like, we don't need another Pepsi ad, right, where someone comes up and gives a Pepsi to a police officer and assume the world's problems are going away, right? There has to be real systemic change internally, and also having those honest conversations. And that's what data allows to happen. Is it becomes a very relatively neutral at first, and then action steps come after. So we always have to look at data, and that's something that everyone just needs to improve on. So with that, of course, right, is these passion points, right, that's listed in the PDF. A lot of people might poo-poo on it, but a big thing is this idea of, have we had any evidence in the past where these young ideas have been able to change, not just for young people, but a society as a whole? And when I think about mental health, and in BBB, we've been calling it brain health, right? Because this also complements productivity and work-life balance, right? A lot of concepts there. But with that there was a push internally from a lot of youngsters to be very open about their struggles, right? And then this opportunity allowed other individuals to be very open about them going and getting coaching, mentorship, and even in some cases talking about counseling. I've had managers who've been very open about their relationships with this, and it was very fascinating, especially seeing it in very formal settings relatively. And with that, of course, I really want, as we push forward with this, is to look at this from a correlational, not a causational kind of way, right? So a lot of people say, oh, let's check this off. If we have all this will cause and coerce people to, be a part of this new culture. No, it's about having these opportunities and actually having true partnerships to not just push that direction, but to correlate with other people and actually create systemic change internally and thus externally. So what I'm excited for is really developing real change. And that really starts from an internal look as a person, as an organization, as a city, regionally, then pushing out forward. A lot of people, they just create a marketing campaign. And we saw this a lot in 2020, and they thought that was enough. And I'm really proud of the team at BBB, because we're a 100-plus-year-old organization. And we've been able to internally challenge that in a good way and really make strides that a lot of other trade associations have been copying. And we're really proud of that as well. So the vision and the mission is driven by data, but it's not to look at it from utilitarian, like how could this benefit our bottom line, but how could this really benefit systemic change? So that's basically my TED Talk.
All right. Thank you for that. And audience, before I jump over to Joel with the same question, please remember, put your questions in the Q&A section of your screen. And Joel, your turn. Thank you, Luke.
Oh, thanks, Evelyn. And excuse me, from our perspective, I was looking at using these progress meters, and I'll just be upfront with everybody, is that we're just getting immersed. As I mentioned before, we embedded them into our local workforce development plan. And so we are looking forward to taking advantage and educating our own stakeholders on the progress meters themselves and how they can assist in long-term planning. I have a couple of examples here. One under our Arizona at Work, Pinal County, and just to let you know, Arizona at Work, wherever you are around the state, there's an Arizona at Work near you. So I'm speaking from the Pinal County perspective of what we're up to. But through Arizona at Work, we have one of our funded programs is a youth program, and that youth program, its funding is required to spend at least 75% of the annual funding on out-of-school youth, or as the progress meters label them, opportunity youth. Same cohort, age 16 to 24, out of school, disconnected basically from society and kind of wandering around. And so this program is tasked with engaging those individuals and steering them back into the education realm. Another metric that we have through our grant is credentials. And so that matches up nicely with under the education progress meter of post-secondary credentials or certificates. So we are kind of in tune with some of the elements of some of the meters, specifically the education one in that regard. And it'd be nice to track that and see what is our overall contribution to the state. And we track these at a county level. And so it's interesting to engage in those. There are plenty of efforts when it comes to workforce development. There are plenty of opportunities for individual agencies and entities to get involved. Everybody touches on workforce development, and this kind of helps us package it and help keep us focused on some of the overall metrics that are important. I'd also like to share with everybody that from a workforce and in Pinal County's Economic and Workforce Development Department, we work, again, as I mentioned earlier, closely with all the cities and towns in Pinal County on their economic development growth and efforts. And we are in the process right now of putting together comprehensive industry profiles for those industries that are targeted to be the foundation for the economic growth in Pinal County. And those industries are going to be packaged, and we're looking at in a strategic way of something called the Arizona Innovation and Technology Corridor, which is basically encompasses the entire county. But if you just picture a swath of land up and down I-10, right, basically from Tucson right up to Maricopa County, we're looking at strategically placing industry clusters within that corridor concept, and that with industries comes the requirement to whenever a company is coming to seek new places to set up shop, want to know, what's your workforce look like? What are you doing in the community? But we also know that as in my example before with an individual, with a company coming, it takes more than just a piece of land and building a building. I don't want to say that's the easy part. It's not. Some of these projects take years to develop. And before anybody even in the public sees dirt moving and a building coming out of the ground, and it could be 4, 5, 6, 7 years of hard work and setting the stage until that peak can be realized. But we're talking about from an economic development standpoint and working with individual companies and packaging Pinal County and Arizona as a whole. There are infrastructure issues. There are natural resources that either take advantage of or having to be dealt with. Health, young talent, as Luke described. I mean, it all plays into a community, whether that's a county or a city, a town, to really strive for success. And so we look forward to engaging our stakeholders when it comes to economic and workforce development and educating them on the meters themselves, because again, as I mentioned before, the meters are capturing and collectively visually pleasing and easy to use. If you go to the website, really looking at a community, and you can really put a package together. Now, when we put our industry profiles together, we'll be tapping into some of the progress meters and seeing, boy, what information can we include in this profile? And to Luke's point, it's not just about numbers. It's not just about, hey, measuring this, but it keeps you focused. And again, it keeps you looking at the global perspective. And we may be doing, from my what I do on a daily basis, focusing on workforce development, but on a daily basis, we're engaged in, again, economic development, education. We work closely with K through 12 to ensure that the kids coming up, as I mentioned before, are prepared and knowledgeable about what their future could hold within Pinal County. Working with CAVIT and the JTEDs or CTEDs right now, the career technical education districts around in Pinal and around the state, to ensure that as we go and grow as a state, that we are working in sync. And I believe the progress meters, again, are a nice package of a comprehensive package of what is important and what it's going to take to keep focused on. And again, we look forward to building upon this. So we put it in our strategic plan to keep us informed, keep our global perspective, not get so siloed in what we have to do every day and check our boxes to get to 5 o'clock, but really keep a comprehensive global perspective on what it takes to not only bring a business to Pinal County, but also to prepare the community to provide a viable workforce for that business. And then what do we do to provide the amenities for that workforce? We have housing, we have recreation, we have everything that goes into that. So it's really an exciting time for us with the planning. The Innovation Technology Corridor provides us again a focal point with which we can bring all of this information and energy together to keep us on track.
All right, Joel, thank you so much. So I'm going to ask the three of you one last formal question, and we do have a couple of questions from the audience. So last question for our panelists from me, and we'll go in the Taniqua, Luke, Joel order. So what helpful hints would you advise our listeners on how best to approach data and fact-based decision-making? Because, data sounds too woo-woo for some people, but you've all described how useful it is to your organization. So what would you tell our audience, like, hey, it's not that scary and you have accessibility? So Taniqua, go ahead and start that one.
Thanks, Evelyn. Well, so all the data geeks out there who support me, you're loving the opportunity of what it does and provides for your organization and other means. But for those who may feel like they're challenged, I think if your organization is kind of interested in starting to prioritize disaggregated data to sort of commit to the full story, I'm just saying start internally. So start internally. And when I say internally, I mean within your organization and within your staff. So it's really talking about, I think, with the staff, understanding the current and historical context of what race and ethnicity is essential to your job and the work of your organization. So if you're going to dive into that, I think that's important. It needs to be a safe space to discuss internally the biases and to learn how to sort of identify those patterns within the work. But if you really are wanting to start to do that disaggregation, it truly is something that needs to start internally as a conversation, so that when you're looking at it or you're going to do it for a community, there's an opportunity to have them engage in actually the context of their lived experiences.
All right, Taniqua, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Luke?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that come to mind, but Taniqua, I really appreciate what you said, because really it is an internal ripple effect that makes a change. And even with myself, I have to look at this day and say, hey, is there anything that I should really care about that I haven't, like when it comes to water, right? Maybe I should have less water bottles and use my Brita filter more, right? These are important things. Yeah, I need to copy Evelyn. She's got the cup right there. But I'm going to throw a couple of military buzzwords. So some of the lesson to your stick. Right. So one thing I've read online, with my brief studies with military, is this concept of lessons learned. Like, what do you need to improve on? So another way to look at this is a failure institute. Like, in your organization, are you able to have conversations about, the things you're failing when it comes to the data that's been portrayed to you, right? If people are consistently saying one thing and you're on the other side of it, right? Maybe it's not a fit for your organization, but maybe there's something you could do that'd be advantageous to what you're doing, right? So lessons learned, like, how could you improve? What did you do and what can you do better? Another thing is mission critical. So we talk, and my boss is great about this. How do we keep the main thing, right? So obviously we're not, with myself, I'm not an expert when it comes to certain minority needs, right? I'm going to have to come to Taniqua and I get her insight on it. And hey, I have this data internally. How should I interpret this? Do you have any ideas of what we should learn from this? Even coming in and hiring consultants who could come in and really revolutionize, or even just speakers for that matter, right? Don't assume you have to do all the work when it comes to the data, like bring in people from universities, experts. When it comes to Pinel, talk to Joel, right? This is important, so just know ways that you could really interact. Something I had to learn, especially as I've done surveys, and luckily I have an amazing team. They're great with surveys. This is a theme I learned when I was studying for my master's, is good data in will help you a lot. But if you have bad data that comes in, you'll get bad data out. And that's why I'm really thankful for CFA with their care, and even partnering with Gallup to make sure that things are very, very, very accurate. So with that is make sure you're collecting data and not trying to lead any questions. So as you collect data internally, don't try to imply I know there's gonna be times where from a PR level, you have to say like, these are your successes. Like, we just know that's the nature of the beast, but honestly try to get an idea of what are some pain points in the organization. And that's the great thing about the progress report and the metrics there, is that these will really help be really a star and a guide to where you need to go and see really where that rhythm is going. And and the last thing right here is this is an opportunity for you to train your data antennas, is not only like data and platform will always change, but how you interpret it, how you learn from it, that's pretty consistent. Just having that willingness and that flexibility for that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Luke. Joel, take a stab at this. Advice to our listeners. Oh, and by the way, you said there is an Arizona at Work agency in a place near you for all of the presenters. So I'll start there. Go ahead.
Thanks, Evelyn. And really just piggybacking what Luke just described, and from our perspective, to say the data tells a story, and it does. And when I say confronted with data, but when presented with data, look at it with, first of all, what's the purpose of it? And, don't go in with any preconceived notions. Try to be as objective as possible. And with that story, what we did in Pinal County, we just recently got contracted with a professional data analyst to assist us in, we want to make sure we understand and we see the story that our data is telling us. With everything I just previously described with the development and economic development direction we're going, we need to know the types of industries that come into Pinal County and what types of occupations that those industries support, and what type of training and what type of workforce are those industries needed, and what type of skill sets are that workforce going to need. And how do you obtain the training, and how do you put together a training plan to support that workforce and filling those gaps? So there's a story to be told whenever we hear about XYZ company is thinking about Pinal County and again wherever in Arizona. You look at your data, you look at some of the and that's where the progress meters again can come into play. What are we looking for? What do we see? Are we missing something? And it helps you put together a comprehensive plan of attack for whatever your specific discipline may be. And so, when it comes to natural resources and the meters with the water rights and the water levels, and, there's data there for it. And so the one thing we find about the data, and the more you have data, and the more you understand that story, it's like Wikipedia. And if you're just on a random topic and looking for something, I don't know about folks on the call here, but you start clicking around on those links, and about 20 minutes later, you forgot what you even got there for, because you're so far. It's like the 6 degrees of separation of your original topic. But when you have your data, it's you can drill down. And the one thing we found is valuable and is being asked for more and more is not data at the state level. We need all data at the county level. And that's only recently that a lot of counties, a lot of economic development data only drills down in some instances down to what are called metropolitan statistical areas. For instance, Pinal County is part of the Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale metropolitan statistical area. You're not going to see Pinal County, but we're lumped into that. And it can skew your data if you're looking at the wrong set or misinterpreting it. So we found that there are tools out there, and moving forward, the further down you can drill down, right down to even census blocks, because companies want to know, boy, within a 25, 50, 75 mile radius of where I'm thinking of landing, what do you got going for me? And so I think it's incumbent as best as possible. I know not, all data can do this depending on the set, but we found that the further down you can drill and have it available, the better it is for use. And you can
Great.
customize it as needed at that level.
Okay, very good. Good advice from our three panelists. I'm going to take one question here, is probably all the time that we have, and any of you can answer this one. It is, what gaps do you see based on the progress meters data that need to be targeted? So what, off the top of your head, might be missing that we as the conveyors of the data and other people users of the data, what's missing? What are the gaps that you might have recognized at this point? Who wants it? Joel?
I'll just throw, I basically just, but that comes to mind immediately to me is what I just stated, is the level that the data is available. Some of it, I noticed, is at the state level and some county level. If we could even just drill those down to the county level, I think that would be most helpful statewide in the use of the meters. Some are there already and some are not. It's a work in progress, understandable, but that's just one thing that sticks out in my mind.
Okay, Taniqua or Luke?
Well, Joel said it, on the journey we're currently on for our economic report. We are finding that we can probably get it by county, but city, and then city has so much margin of error because our numbers are low, that it is challenging. And so the hope is that there is an opportunity to create some more consistency so that we can look more than just state, but look at each of the counties and then drill down into the cities if we are actually tracking that information properly.
Great, thank you. Luke, anything to add to that question?
Yeah. So honestly, I think when you see the progress report, you're going to actually have so much to chew on. I recommend taking half a day with your team, give them homework the night before to review everything. Once you see it, so that question is, it might change. But I will say though, what might be incredibly handy in the future is other states utilizing a similar framework. So we could do one-to-one matches with some of the data. Even some of the other, not these surveys specifically in this research, but as you develop research based on region, mimicking it and making sure there's a one-to-one match. But CFA has done a great job. And my hope is that other states have some of these things, so then we could start comparing those metrics from a more one-to-one basis. But they've done a great job with the data from other states that we're cognizant of.
Okay, terrific. So there were a number of other questions. We will answer them outside of this forum. So those of you who were kind enough to ask questions, we will get to you. So Taniqua, Luke, Joel, thank you for participating with us today. You really did add texture and context to what's going on. We look forward to hearing more about your journeys with data in the future. So thank you for joining us. So the next transition, last but not least on the agenda this morning, you will now be treated to an introduction to the recently released Young Talent Progress Meters by our CFA Director of Civic Health Initiatives, Christy Tate. Christy, take it away. Thank you all.
So much. Thank you so much, Evelyn, and thank you again to the panel, to Joel and Taniqua and Luke. Such a fantastic discussion and such incredible examples of what we hope to see happening with this information across the state. So we're really grateful to you. I must say, I feel after hearing Luke speak as one of our young talent advisors, I want to just hand the mic back over to him to carry us home, because he's so passionate and thoughtful about these issues. But I'm here today to share some of our newest information through the launch of the Untalent Progress Meter. As Sibel shared and Evelyn and Luke really touched on as well, we take really seriously the role of listening to Arizonans first, to really understand what are the issues that matter most. How do we develop then a framework for action and really bring attention and visibility to those most important priorities. And we took that approach with the Young Talent Progress Meter as well. So we entered into discussion across the state with young Arizonans in their 20s and 30s. We were led by our wonderful senior fellows, Dr. Larry Penley and Pat Beatty, to really have discussions about whether they grew up in Arizona, moved here, what their experience has been. What do they love about this place? What's been challenging? What would attract them to be here for the long term, and what might cause them to leave? And through that, gathered a sense of some really key themes of experience statewide, and wanted to hear from more voices. So we launched a survey to then gather more input on what are the top issues of concern that require more data and attention. And we were really struck by the response. We had over 2,000 responses to our survey, thousands of open-ended comments. And for us, that really helped convey how much interest and appetite there was for young people to really be a part of this discussion. Part of the data that really animated this research journey for us at the center was this information that comes from the Board of Regents, which really shows, shortly after graduation from our state's universities, we keep most of our graduates, but as you get to about 10, 15 years out, we have about half. So that was something in particular we wanted to understand more, what's happening at that point in career and community and family life that might be prompting that to happen, and to really dig a little bit more deeply. So with that whole listening journey, we were able to pull all of that information into a set of key metrics, 13 metrics of top concern from young Arizonans that are now the final milestone of the progress meters, in which we have new data to share with you today. So I'll just share out a couple of the themes from this information. One really front and center theme of the discussion across the board was really more equitable access to opportunity. So we heard whether it was young people coming out of K-12, raising kids in K-12, coming here for university and being drawn into Arizona for our universities, this focus on education really as a pathway to opportunity. So that came through very clearly. I think there are other issues that were really top of mind for young people building a life here: cost of living, cost of housing. We heard a lot about what that would mean for whether or not they saw a long-term path here in Arizona. We saw with the data now that we're able to provide on those issues of cost of housing, for example, using the Housing Opportunity Index in Flagstaff, for example, a significant increase in cost of housing and decrease in affordability. So when we think about, the implications for young people, prompt some questions about where we're headed in our communities. This other issue that Luke spoke so passionately about, of workplace culture, was very frequent in our discussions and emerged as really one of the top issues in our survey, of young people wanting a place where they could grow a career, where they felt like they were learning and advancing and really found a sense of purpose. That idea of really having impact through work life and professional life came through very clearly. And in using data to explore that now, we're able to see that when you look at top rated companies through a lot of workplace culture surveys, Arizona does have a strong presence. And we're going to continue that conversation, digging a little bit more deeply with our young talent advisors, with employers, with many of you with us today, to really understand what are those drivers of positive workplace culture and engagement. The other key theme was really the desire to be heard and to make an impact. I think we were so struck and inspired by our engagement in this process, and inviting the young talent advisors to join us in this journey, to have rising leaders across the state who are so excited to continue to be a part of this discussion and to really figure out with us, how do we make sense of all this information? How do we tell the story? And then how do we really drive action with information? So we heard that really across the board, that that young people want, whether it's in community life, in that workplace sense of purpose and civic leadership, to be at the table and to be engaged and to really help be a part of shaping the narrative and the future of the state here. And alongside that was also a focus on having leaders that represent diverse voices, that are thinking long-term about the future. That was one of our top rated issues as well. And finally, We had a lot of discussion and heard a lot of great input on focusing on health and sustainability for our communities. So one of the top rated issues in our survey, and that came up quite a bit, was water management, water supplies, but also thinking broadly about how do we reconcile planning that takes into account natural resources along economic growth, coming back to that focus on really long-term planning for the future. And health became really front and center in our discussions, whether that was, insurance, quality of care, and Luke mentioned as well the focus on mental health, which in conversation with our young leaders and advisors over the past few months, and with data reinforcing the emergent need and the unmet need in mental health for young people, that's something that requires more attention and visibility. So with all this information, 13 metrics that you can view on our website, and a survey report which has really incredible, rich data and quotes and insights that we gathered from young people across the state. What comes next? Today, we're so excited to be sharing this out with you all because, as with all of the progress meters, what you heard in our panel discussion was we're really committed to bringing the progress meters and the data as tools to really create that framework for discussion, to bring communities together around common priorities, and then to really identify opportunities in our decision making, whether that's policy, practice, investments, to bring that data to bear on our decision making as communities. With the Young Talent Progress Meter, we're so proud to have worked with our young talent advisors and young people across the state. We'll be continuing to help tell their stories and work with them to really come to their workplaces and their communities to really help tell the story as well. And then finally, our hope with all of the progress meters, and particularly in young talent, is to work with you all to hold conversations. We hold the Arizona We Want community conversations. We can bring a young talent community conversation to your community to share out some of these findings and to really start that discussion about, what questions does it prompt, what challenges and opportunities does it surface, and then what are really the opportunities to move forward based on that data. So we invite all of you to join us in that discussion and hope that you'll do so. So with that, I am very happy to welcome Sibel Francis back with us to bring us to a close today, but want to thank again the wonderful panel for joining us and being great partners, and all of you for being here today as well. Thank you, Sibel.
Thank you so much, Christy, and thank you all for sticking with us through this very data-rich conversation, I would say. As you can probably deduce from today's conversations, our ambitions at CFA are very bold. We would like to contribute to a strengthened sense of pride in Arizona, in who we are and what we can do, to an Arizona that's responsive to what matters most to Arizonans, and to a future that works for all Arizonans. And I guess we're geeky enough to think that data can help get us there. And, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the way we do our work is we listen closely to Arizonans in many different ways. Certainly the Gallup poll 10 years ago and the most recent one that we're fielding right now have an input in that. We share trusted data about how Arizona is doing. We identify important issues that we learn about, and then we help mobilize communities and leaders around the things that matter most to them. The conversations to me on the panel today were so incredibly inspiring. So I think for those of you who've kind of watched us along this journey, this is the most sophisticated discussion and most informed discussion that we've had about how we can use data and how we can use these progress meters. I'm so excited about our partnership with State of Black Arizona and Taniqua Broughton's incredible leadership there about what we're doing there. That is using data in a certain way. The work with Joel Millman and Arizona at Work is yet another variation on how we do that, and we're really excited about that work. And then Luke Amargo and the Better Business Bureau, yet a different model, but all of them are using data in a way that helps drive data-based decision-making and action. And for those of you who have not participated in some of these conversations we've brought together around data, there's something very magical about what data can do. I think it helps bring trust and a framework to conversations that is very different than sort of freewheeling conversations that are not grounded in data. One thing I did want to point out, particularly with regard to the conversation about how do you even get started, I think one of the things I'm really proud of with our Arizona Progress Meters is that really it is a set of curated data that you can use. So there is no lack of data out there. That is not the issue. The issue is how do we help make sense of it all? How do we make it accessible? How do we make it usable? And that's really what the Arizona Progress Meters can do. And they can help start and frame conversations. But of course, it's really where you go from there that really matters in terms of getting things done for your community or for your organization. So I want to thank Matt again and the League for allowing CFA to share our work and really our hopes and ambitions for creating a stronger and brighter future for Arizona with all of you. Thank Evelyn for really fantastic conversation with the panel. Thank Taniqua, thank Joel, thank Luke, and then of course Christy of our team in the release of our really exciting new progress meter on young talent. So I look forward to working with all of you in a creative and impactful way to build a stronger and brighter future for Arizona. And thank you for being here and for sharing this journey with us. I'll turn it back to you, Matt, if you need to close this out.
Yeah, thank you, Sibel, and thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to all the attendees who joined and participated. There was a question, and what we'll do is we have recorded this session, so we will send the recording. We're going to have it on our YouTube channel, and I think the Center for the Future of Arizona will also have it. So we'll either have it on our channels or send it out to all the participants with the PowerPoint. So you'll have the ability to watch it or to share it with those who weren't able to attend. So thank you all again. We really appreciate it. And I think we all hope that next year we can do this in person again at our annual conference. Let's pray that it's a different world in 2021. So thank you. Have a great afternoon. Bye, everybody.